everybody wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
Graffiti isn't just about painting, it's about finding spots, and for a lot of us, it's also about meeting other writers, other graffiti artists, and becoming part of this community. In today's video, I'm gonna go ahead and give you some tips on how graffiti artists tend to discover new spots and how you can meet new graffiti artists. But we're also gonna go into a little bit about some of the things you should be thinking about and why new graffiti artists tend to find it really difficult to discover new walls. So right off the bat, brand new graffiti artists think you need somebody to show you where these spots are, but the truth of the matter is you can find these spots all on your own. And before you go looking for these spots on your own, a few things to keep in mind. Some of these places might not be areas you're comfortable going into. They could be dangerous, or it may not be legal, and once again, you may not be comfortable with those things. This video isn't advising that anybody breaks the law or goes into dangerous areas. So always be smart about your decision making, and don't do anything that's going to jeopardize you. With that said, what are we looking for? A few things that graffiti artists look for when trying to find spots. Number one, train tracks. Train tracks are a gold mine for finding walls. Even in rural areas, in the middle of nowhere, train tracks will still lead you to good quality spots, good quality walls. In fact, I would venture to say if you could find train tracks, you can definitely find a spot. Now, how far you have to walk or drive alongside the train tracks to find those spots is going to vary based on where you live, but we'll address that in a minute. Next thing a lot of graffiti artists look for is abandoned buildings, which, ironically enough, you'll find a lot on the train tracks. Abandoned buildings are great. While not all of them are legal to paint, in fact, most aren't, at the same time, people feel comfortable painting these because, well, nobody cares about the buildings more times than not, especially in rural areas where the building may be forgotten about and nobody's coming to search for anybody in these buildings. You see, I started this list off with train tracks because everything honestly comes right back to train tracks, but let me go ahead and say you don't need train tracks for all of these. However, underpasses. Underpasses are another great spot to find graffiti at. Once again, you don't need train tracks for those, but you will often find underpasses and overpasses and train tracks, you know, they kind of go hand in hand. And once again, kind of like the abandoned building, most of the time these are not legal, but there are some legal underpasses where, you know, the city, the town doesn't mind if you go ahead and paint. Now, depending, you might have to get permission, or maybe the law just isn't enforced on that spot. Definitely check the wall before you go ahead and paint on it. And that goes for all of these, right? I mean, even if you're a hardcore writer, you always want to know the spot you're hitting before you hit it. Every spot I'm talking about here in today's video. When you go out catching spots, we all know what the deal is with those walls. We all know none of those are legal, right? And you often don't go out searching for those walls. You can, but that's not often what happens. With the spots we're talking about in today's video, you're setting aside time to do a little bit of research and a little bit of adventuring and searching in order to find these spots. And as a result, you're finding a different kind of area, a different kind of wall that might have different rules applied. Some of these might be legal. Some of them people may just not care about, and in others may just be as illegal as the spots you normally hit when you're just catching walls. So we always want to be aware of what the wall is and the rules behind it when it comes to the walls we're talking about in today's video. It lets you know what kind of risks you're taking, or if you're taking any at all. You might not be. Now, when you're meeting new graffiti artists, you don't want to look like a toy. So if you want to get yourself out of the toy phase, or if you're experienced and you want to refine your style, then check out our How to Do Graffiti book in the description down below. We've helped countless people find their style and learn graffiti in the easiest way possible. And we did this with not only hundreds of pictures throughout the book that hold your hand through each lesson, but we go in ridiculous amounts of depth with each one of graffiti's fundamentals with information that you can't find in any other How to Do Graffiti book. Save yourself some money and use the coupon code on screen now when you go ahead and purchase the digital version of the book over at theartistblock.inc, or grab a physical copy over on Amazon. I got a link to both of those in the description down below. Now, I can't mention all the stuff about train tracks and follow train tracks and you'll find spots on train tracks and not mention train yards. How do you not mention train yards? But hey, guess where those are? They're also on train tracks. That came off very sarcastically and I didn't mean it to. Now, from there, something that I like to do is to just look between the trees when I'm driving around. You know how like sometimes you'll just see a lot of trees packed on the side of the street, like dense woods packed on the street? This isn't really going to apply so much to the city, guys, because, you know, you're in the city, but if you're in a rural area, you might drive by areas like this. Well, if you have a path or you have some kind of trail or you just see trees, then sometimes you might spot a wall in the distance. These walls are usually just an abandoned house or an abandoned random building, but that's another area you may find graffiti. And the last way to help you find graffiti to tie all of these together is some people like to use Google Maps. They'll go ahead and use Google Maps to locate train tracks and see what abandoned buildings they can find through there. And you don't even have to follow the train tracks. You can honestly just kind of go on your own little adventure digitally in order to find spots from the comfort of your own home. Now, this is a great time to segue directly into why new graffiti artists find it so difficult to find spots. While this wasn't as much of a difficulty in the past. And the reason is because everybody's stuck behind the computer screen. Nobody actually wants to go out and look for spots anymore. Something changed. Something really changed around 2010. Now, granted, the internet had been around before that, obviously, but I mean, people would still look for spots before that point. I remember walking the train tracks, and I didn't have to walk far in order to find spots close by, but there was an instance where me and some friends, some people in my crew, we walked 4 hours in one direction to find an underpass to paint, and we did some pieces on it. It was a damn good time, but man, not only was the memories fun, I mean, it was a pain walking that long because it was in the middle of summertime. I was carrying a bucket of paint, I was carrying a roller, I was carrying my backpack. It was arduous. It was like 90 degrees out, and you know I had the hoodie on because, I mean, because I'm dumb. So of course I had the hoodie on. We walked 4 hours one way just to find this spot. And here's the thing, I say that every older graffiti artist that's been doing graffiti as long as I've been doing graffiti, they all agree. They all done the same thing. We've all done it. But new graffiti artists, there are very few of you guys who have even walked 30 minutes for a spot. And this is why you can't find spots. This is why you're asking me for this video, because you don't go out and look for spots. Now, once again, legal disclaimer for the video, don't put yourselves in danger, don't go looking for trouble, don't go to spots that are illegal. Due to the sketchiness of certain areas, if you do want to go to those areas, then I recommend going with another person, just in case. I'll never forget a story where, if I remember correctly, top 5, definitely his younger brother as is, and this other writer I didn't really know too well. They went to a spot where somebody pulled out a shotgun on them. Like, it was just a random dude in this abandoned area who pulled out a shotgun. And I mean, I knew it was true, I knew it was real, because the other guy I wasn't too familiar with, the guy that I didn't know, was shaking when he came into the shop telling the story. Like, he was definitely in shock from the whole entire situation. Now, not saying that happens all the time. I've never had that happen. I've never had a random guy in an abandoned building pull out a shotgun on me. But crazy things can happen. And at the end of the day, you always want to be safe. So I always recommend going with somebody else if you can. I mean, even the train tracks that I used to walk as a kid in order to find spots, a lot of people have been robbed on those train tracks. You'd also see needles all over the floor, like it was a mess. But that's gonna change depending on where you live. You know, that's not always going to be the case. Kind of like when I went down to the Poconos and we went on the train tracks, and we even went off the train tracks, venturing into some, you know, underpasses and areas like that. And it was legal to be there. They had signs that clearly said, like, don't pass this point, but there was no graffiti over there. The area where the graffiti was completely okay to be at. That isn't to say that it was legal to paint, but it was at least legal to be there. So let's kind of segue into, how do you meet other graffiti artists? Well, guess what? You meet them by going to where graffiti artists go to. And luckily for us, there's quite a few different, not only reliable places to meet them, but also some that kind of take a little bit more luck. So at any of the previous spots we just mentioned, that we just talked about, train yards, abandoned buildings, you know, things of that nature, you can meet them by chance, but you can give yourself a better shot at meeting them if you understand the spot. So I'll use myself as an example. There was both a legal wall and an illegal wall that was abandoned. Nobody really cared about it, but I used to go to these areas pretty frequently. Let's start with the illegal down low spot first. So here, as an example, I would go there, I would see the pieces that were there, and then next week I would follow up and come back and I'd see a new piece. This would tell me, all right, so people are actively coming to the spot. It's not like the last thing that was painted was 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. If I went there last Friday and I'm coming here now on Saturday, the following week, well, that tells me that somebody came in between those days. They're an adult, they likely have a job, they're probably not coming here on the weekdays. Let me go ahead and try to come back here on Friday, let's say 10 o'clock, and maybe I'll hang out for an hour or two. I chill, nobody comes around, that's perfectly fine. Come back Saturday, same time, and what do you know? Boom, there somebody is. Now, you can't really narrow down what specific time people will go, but narrowing down the day, especially if a graffiti artist who's frequently going to that area, can be a lot easier. At the legal wall I used to go to, because we had a pretty large graffiti scene, I was pretty much able to go there at any point during the weekend and I'd almost always find somebody. So even at the legal wall, you can kind of employ the same tactic of just showing up at the wall pretty frequently, once a week, twice a week, in order to see what's happening and how frequently people are going there, and trying your luck at different times in order to see if you meet somebody. Since it is a legal wall, maybe the owner is nearby, maybe they're inside the building, you can go ahead and ask around, ask people near the wall who owns the building, you know, they're the owner, and what time people are usually painting around here. Then try and come around those times. Of course, you can always check out different graffiti events and jams that happen. It's not uncommon to find black book sessions and different graffiti events such as Jersey Burns or even art events that happen to be centered around graffiti. This could be a great place to find other graffiti artists. While that might be a little bit more difficult in rural areas because obviously there isn't much of a graffiti scene to throw events for, these events still exist and you could travel to them. Now I know not all of you guys have money, and some of you guys are a bit younger, you may not be able to travel. If they are in your area, do try to go. On the flip side of that, you can also make your own legal walls by contacting small businesses, so on and so forth. Sure, you're going to hear a lot of no's, but you're going to eventually hear the occasional yes. Go ahead and paint my wall. In which case, you'll find that people may come up to you. And while we're on the topic, a great way to meet other graffiti artists, even if you're in the middle of nowhere, is to look at murals. You can look at murals of your small town, which a lot of small towns surprisingly do have murals, or you can look to neighboring cities, whether it's through Google Maps or just driving there. And usually the person who did the mural will have their Instagram or some kind of social media on the mural itself that you can go ahead and look at. From there, you just go ahead and shoot them a DM and start chatting with them, start making friends. That's really all it boils down to, is reach out, explore, and make friends. That being said, if I had to give one tip when meeting new graffiti artists that I believe to be the most important tip in this video, is to avoid the drama. Graffiti artists are huge fans of just petty schoolgirl drama that is like, it's super immature. Avoid it at all costs. Alright dudes, that pretty much wraps up today's video. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what tips you guys have for finding spots and meeting graffiti artists, or even if you should find other graffiti artists. Leave it in the comments down below. And while you're at it, if you're frustrated trying to learn graffiti and you don't know how to learn this art form, then check out our How to Do Graffiti book. I'm telling you, it'll make the whole process a cinch. It'll make it super easy and stress-free. Want the best How to Do Graffiti tutorials anywhere online? We got that playlist right up here with more graffiti content right down here. I'll catch you guys back here next week. Thanks for watching.